open the meeting. Welcome. And welcome to the webinar Preparing Routing for the Post-Quantum Cryptography Transition that is co-organized by Afnic, the .fr Registry and Research Center, and the IGF Dynamic Coalition Internet Standard Security and Safety, or IS3C. My name is Wouter Natus van der Borgt, and I am your host and moderator for today. I'm a consultant Internet governance based in the Netherlands and a coordinator of IS3C. We have collaborated with the UN IGF Secretariat that hosts this webinar very kindly, and we thank you for your effort there. Late in 2024, Afnic commissioned IS3C to write a report on the technical, political, and social implications of the advent of quantum computing. This project was led by Elef Kizo Cortez and by João Moreno Falcao, presented its outcome at the 2025 IGF in Lillestrøm under the title Social, Political and Technical Impacts of IoT and PQC Policies. IS3C and Afnic agreed that this report, no matter how much traction it got, would not be enough, and decided to enter a second phase and aimed at turning theory into practice. This webinar is a third in a series of three. The first was held in February and was generic in nature. The second was on Wednesday, the 18th of March, and was on the topic of DNS and the PQC transition. But simultaneously, we have put out a call for experts to join two working groups regarding PQC, one for the DNS ecosystem and the other for routing. As we focused on DNS, obviously, we now go into routing for today. But I will return to the working groups later in this webinar. With me today are five speakers: Benoît Ampeau, Santosh Pandit, Diederik Doesburg, Nicolas Fiumarelli, and João Falcao Moreno. You will be invited to ask questions after the final presentation by Nico, and after this round I will return with news on the working group, as I said. And then a final round of questions will be opened. But first, let me introduce to you Benoît Ampeau. He is Director of Partnerships and Innovation and Head of Afnic's Research Lab and the sponsor of this project. He will touch upon why the timely and coordinated PQC transition is important for Afnic and the challenges that Afnic foresees for the routing transition. So, Benoît, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Wout, for the presentation. And dear everyone, hello and welcome in this webinar. So I am very pleased that Afnic, the non-profit internet registry managing the .fr zone and other top-level domains, has joined and contributed to this work and webinars with IS3C. In our registry role, Afnic uses BGP routing protocol primarily to enhance and distribute its IP prefixes associated with our services, particularly for the name servers of our DNS zones we are managing and also our own Anycast DNS infrastructures. RPKI protects us from root hijacks through cryptographic signatures. Signatures that are directly threatened by quantum computing and that are central to today's webinar on the post-quantum transition for internet routing. So we are pleased to end this webinar series with experts from this field. Afnic engagement here is really very straightforward. Raise awareness without alarmism, understand the challenges on key internet infrastructure services. We aim to explain key principles, present expert work, and foster dialogue. Post-quantum cryptography is about service continuity and trust for DNSSEC as much as for PGP routing secured by RPKI. There is still time ahead, but test already shows real challenges: larger signatures, algorithm selection, or key rollovers plans. Some actors are moving faster than others, and the complexity of the internet makes coordination essential. This is why we are here today. IS3C Baseline Summit sums it up well. The coalition brings together the technical community, civil society, policymakers, regulators, and operators to make online activity safer through the widespread and rapid deployment of internet standard and best practices. Afnic fully supports this ongoing dialogue at every IGF and between IGF meetings, not just once a year. Our clear call to action is simple. Get interest in the topic, assess its impact on your systems for BGP here today, but also for DNS services and more generally on all assets that rely on digital signatures. And prepare your transition phases. We have time, but uh, let us, use it wisely, individually and collectively. So thank you to today's BGP RPKI experts. Let's keep the presentation and discussion going.
Thank you, Benoit. I think you underscored the necessity to start acting on this topic as soon as possible. That's also one of the reasons that we invited the next speaker. Santosh Pandit is a regulator and a technical innovator working for the Bank of England and an expert in this field. And you will tell us a little bit more about the general environment, why this topic is so important. Santosh, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is the first time I'm speaking at an IGF and IS3C event, so thank you for inviting me, and I'm very pleased to be here. Of course, as you introduced, I'm a financial services regulator in the United Kingdom, but today I'll be speaking in my professional capacity because in the UK, we do not have a regulation relating to RPKI at the moment. Therefore, I'll share with you what I'm trying to achieve in the UK rather than what is the actual regulation. I'll share my screen and that should come in. Here we are. Minimize. As Banma said, we should not panic or have a knee-jerk reaction, but I sincerely believe that we need to start now because time will run out. I'm sharing my views with you, as I mentioned with you, and a few. I will be sharing all of these slides with the IGF Secretariat as well as with IC3 for their website. So these will be available to you after the call as well. I've created a glossary on some of the topic. I will not go through all of them, but the last one, the resource public key infrastructure, is the topic that we are discussing today. I just want to focus a little bit on the two important pillars of the post-quantum cryptography journey. Confidentiality. I'm a central banker myself, so it is at the heart of everything that we do. So using the post-quantum algorithms, we are protecting our confidentiality, and that is protecting my data channel, which is on the left-hand side there. So anybody who is trying to tap into what we are doing, we are trying to reasonably protect ourselves using the new algorithms. However, just using the key encapsulation mechanism, the KEM, is not good enough because it is still exposed to the risk of active interception. So although we are protecting the key exchange or the shared secrets, we are not fully protected. So I'll now move to the right-hand side, which is really important for us. It is about authenticity or the signature, digital signatures. And that's where I think the trust element comes into picture. If we do not have proper signatures which can defend against quantum computers, then we have a future risk of forgery or impersonation. This applies not just to one element, but three elements. The TLS certificates that we trust and we use, the DNS security, which was covered in the previous session organized by IS3C, and today's topic, the root public key infrastructure. So when we bring these two together, A and B, then we have a reasonable chance of defending against highly sophisticated adversaries who are going to use the cryptographically relevant quantum computers and who have a capacity to execute the man-in-the-middle attack. I will not go into full details of this slide because it will be shared with you. But what is happening is if we look at the top left here, I've tried to establish the timelines across various jurisdictions, including the UK or even Australia. There are a couple of years of differences across jurisdictions, but most of the jurisdictions will say do the stock take by around 28 to 30. implement hybrid algorithms by 30, and go into pure algorithms by 35. And that is almost everywhere in the world. At the bottom is what I see, the left-hand side is the obstacles in the process. Now, everybody is collaborative, everybody is playing their role, but what I'm worried about in the UK is the slow moving parts related to standardization. There are lots of people doing the work. I think the time will pass. And if we have to be ready by 2035, much of this work will need to be completed early enough so that then we can interpret those standards into products, then test those products, do the pilots, and then go into production mode. And this is why the time frame looks long, but it is not very long. I just want to share with you my takeaways for today is we start the stock take now. The harvest now decrypt letter risk is active even today. We will not ignore it. Hybrid post-quantum cryptography algorithms, let us treat that as a bridge. It is a helpful bridge, but some cases, if we try to use hybrid for everything, the size of the key and the exchange becomes large, and therefore we need pure cryptography eventually. We have some external dependencies, which I mentioned in the previous slide. And one thing is that some of us have older infrastructure called legacy infrastructure, and that is going to be one of the stumbling blocks that we all of face. So I'll stop sharing now, and I'll stay in for questions later in the presentation.
And thank you, Santosh. And I think that you shown two things. But the first is that how important it is, just like Benoit said, to start as early as possible with this whole trajectory towards the transition. But the other one is that I suppose that for the banking world, it is extremely important that it is taken care of before the first quantum computer goes live, because there will be a lot of issues around the world if we don't. As you said, there's room for questions later, so thank you. The next speaker is somebody who we've invited because he actually did a master thesis on post-quantum cryptography and its transition. He did that research work at the SIDN labs in the Netherlands. And now he's working in software somewhere totally unrelated, I understand. But Dirk, please enlighten us on your work and your master thesis.
I was thinking we had Nicholas first, right? But
I thought that you
I can
were
go now.
first.
But
I thought you were first, but unless I'm mistaken, that's the order I have. But
yeah, but it's okay.
yeah, okay.
Right.
Nicholas, are yours okay? That's
Share my screen. Is that working?
yes, it is. Thank you.
All right. Well, so hi, I'm Dirk, and I did my master's thesis at SIDN Labs about PQC for the RPKI. So just to be sure, let's take a quick look at the rules in the RPKI for those who aren't experts on it, I guess. So it's a hierarchy of certificate authorities, so each with their own certificate, with regional registries at the top. Those are the trust anchors. And those have public keys that are often hard-coded in validating software. Underneath those are different organizations. It can be national internet registries or just plain companies that also get CA certificates. And these can then sign ROAs that are published at the repository, which then is downloaded by relying parties that verify everything and expose it to routers to be used in routing. Now, this hierarchy is signed using RSA, and the communication between certificate authorities, so between an RAR and its members, is also authenticated using RSA. Now, while I won't spend any precious time explaining why it's really necessary to change this pretty soon, one thing to keep in mind is that in contrast to other systems like DNSSEC, using the RPKI with broken crypto is much worse than not using it at all. So let's look at this in more detail. If we assume an attacker that can create forged RSA signatures in the RPKI, then what would they do to make use of this? The first simple option that comes to mind is, let's say I'm attempting to do a prefix hijack. Then I could forge a ROA that allows my attack. Then my evil BGP announcement would become ROV valid, while the remaining legitimate announcement is also ROV valid. This makes the BGP announcement just as attractive, basically, and the security is degraded to the similar level that we had before ROV was introduced. Now, more importantly, there's a much more effective attack where rather than forging a ROA, we can also forge revocation. So I revoke the legitimate ROA or even an entire RAR's certificate, which means that all legitimate announcements become ROV invalid. And my evil announcement is the only one left that is ROV valid. So this way, a hijack attempt would be much more effective than it was without ROV, because it gets preferred over legitimate routes, even if the legitimate routes are shorter or more specific. And by revoking a trust anchor like an RAR, this can also be used to perform denial of service against a large part of the internet. Now, this was assuming an attacker that can forge and also publish objects in the RPKI, which is slightly different from only being able to make a forged signature. So how can we get this last step of publication? The most attractive attack to do this doesn't even entail forging RPKI objects themselves at all, where instead you can impersonate a child CA that's requesting a certificate from its parent. So this is a message that's signed using RSA. If you forge this signature, then you can request from the parent a certificate for an attacker's public key. And after doing this, you get all remaining forgeries, so forging actual objects for free because you can just sign them with your own evil key. Now, to prevent this, what we need to secure is the authentication between CAs, which is called the BPKI. And there we have a problem, which is the BPKI doesn't really do key rollovers yet. This is something that Tim Bruinzels, who I saw is also in here, already proposed a solution for back at ITF 115, but it hasn't been implemented really yet. So that's the first important step to secure this. Now, second, the regional internet registries all have a hosted CA service, which is basically a website where you can ask them to make ROAs on your behalf instead of hosting your own CA software. This is used by the majority of operators. And clearly, this also needs to be protected with post-quantum TLS and multi-factor authentication. And finally, there's the option to forge RPKI objects by forging the signatures and then forging a message to a repository to get it published or injecting it directly to a validator that's downloading from a repository. Now we get to the next thing I looked into, which is what signature algorithm we could use in the RPKI. So in this level 1 security level, that's the weakest of the post-quantum levels, would probably be fine, but we should definitely be using a hybrid so it stays safe even if post-quantum crypto breaks. Next, the most interesting criteria relate to performance. So there is signature size and public key size and the verification speed. Most post-quantum signatures are much bigger than the RSA ones, and RPKI consists of quite many signatures, almost 1 million, and half as many public keys. So changing to post-quantum will increase the size of the RPKI itself. And the big difference between the RPKI and other PKIs is that every validator always downloads all of the signatures and verifies all of the signatures. So we really want a candidate that minimizes this size increase just to minimize the delay and also the bandwidth needed to download. To get some idea of the impact that increasing the signature size will have, I did a measurement for how long it takes relying parties to download all of the RPKI, which comes down to roughly 14.5 seconds of downloading actual data from a Dutch data center. So this excludes lots of delays that are constant, like establishing connections and timeouts that don't increase with the size of the RPKI. Then for verification speed, I did a similar measurement where verifying all of the signatures takes roughly 13 CPU seconds on a single core. So if we were to double the time it takes to verify one signature, then the total would become 26 seconds. Now keep in mind these seconds are in my measurements. Different validators will have different results, and the CPU seconds for verification might be easier to parallelize than the downloading time. Now, using these benchmarks, we estimate the download time and verification time for every post-quantum signature candidate. And then here's an overview that shows the results for at least some of the candidates. We see that Falcon is really the best of the options. It has decent performance impact. It's not that large. So that would be the favorite candidate. Of course, it should be used in a hybrid with either RSA or elliptic curve crypto. There's not a clear winner for which one to pick there. Finally, there's a disadvantage to Falcon, sadly, which is that its standardization timeline is still unclear. It's been delayed by well over a year now. So if that doesn't come soon, then we might be forced to go with MLDSA instead, which is worse in performance. Now you see for both of these options that there is still quite some performance impact, and I found a way to mitigate most of this, which you can find more about at the linked internet draft. Finally, I looked into how we could actually make a migration work. There seems to be an official answer, which is RFC 6916, which is the official algorithm agility procedure for the RPKI, which works by first determining flag days, 5 of them that are to be published in an RFC. We then build a copy of the RPKI from the top down that uses only the new algorithm. And when that's done, relying parties can switch. And finally, the old algorithm, algorithm A, can be dropped. Now, this approach is not realistic. It would take many years to build the copy of the RPKI from the top down. And throughout this time, it needs a lot of coordination to get the timing right, to make the flag days in time, and also to keep these two copies of the RPKI synchronized. So that's really expensive, unattractive, something that operators don't like. So instead, we need to do what's called a mixed tree migration. That is, we allow post-quantum parents to have traditional child CAs and post-quantum child to have traditional parents. That way, we can first publish relying party software that can verify both post-quantum and traditional certificates. And we can publish this software and possibly also trust anchors that the RERs intend to use in the future. Then we can wait for a long time because mixed tree certificates are allowed. Then we can also measure whether relying parties have updated by using a single experimental CA. And finally, when enough relying parties are up to date, or when it really becomes necessary, we can quickly switch to the post-quantum algorithms by a normal key roll that every CA can do individually. Now, I've implemented this in some of the most commonly used CA software, and there it turns out that doing this by a normal key roll is really very easy for operators, and it works. An advantage here is both that we can do measurements while waiting for relying parties to update, and we could have multiple algorithms at once. So we could, for example, have the roots or the BPKI use post-quantum already, while the other ones stay using traditional crypto for a long time to avoid the performance cost when it's not needed yet. So wrapping up, here's what I think should happen next. Performance of signatures doesn't really appear to be a big challenge for the RPKI. It's a challenge, but it's feasible. But the bigger challenges that are quite urgent are being able to do algorithm rollovers or in authentication between CAs, even a key rollover in general. So regardless of if it's to another traditional algorithm or post-quantum. A good first step there could be to first practice using a migration to elliptic curve crypto, which is something we can start with quite quickly. No need to wait for Falcon to get standardized. And that would be great practice for in a couple of years when post-quantum really becomes necessary. And then when it actually comes to introducing post-quantum, Falcon would be a good choice, of course, in a hybrid. Alternatively, we might have to use MLDSA. The performance impact we can mitigate by using the null scheme, the internet draft I linked. And we could use specialized algorithms for trust anchors, so for the RERs and for use between CAs in the RPKI. Then for the actual migration, the first step would be publishing software that supports the new algorithm, and if at all possible, also the new trust anchors, and then waiting for a long time while measuring whether validators have updated. And everything after that is much less urgent. That should be it for now. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Dirk. And to Nico and Dirk, my apologies, because I looked in my original notes and it was the order there, and I mixed them up in making the speaking notes. So, but I hope that that will be fine. Thank you for your showing your results, because I think they're extremely interesting, but also that they're quite positive. But you also showed that there are threats out there already that are not always taken care of, and that they need to be taken care of as well. So I think that you have a very good, interesting conclusion, and that it is quite different from the DNS session 2 weeks ago, where things were far more complicated, it seems, than the one you presented on now. Nico, also my apologies, but you will take us through more of the technique. That would have been the logical order, but as I said, I mixed up my notes, and my apologies. But I give the floor to you, Nico. And I should introduce you, of course. Nico is a senior software developer at LACNIC, but represents ISOC Uruguay in this webinar, where he is a board member. And he's also the chair of IS3C's Working Group on IoT and co-author of the Working Group 9 report on the PQC. Nico will go deeper into the technical implications of the transition, focusing on routing. Nico, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wout. Hello, everyone. Nico Fiumarelli. Thank you for the presentation. What we are going to see now is a quick look into the routing security concepts, is to lower a little the barriers in understanding these kind of concepts. So on first, I will talk about IP, autonomous systems, and BGP, that is the protocol used for routing, super rapidly reminders, then about the actual real cases that are the route leaks and the real examples of those, and then to explain the role of RPKI and ASPA in protecting the routing protocol. So very simple introduction. Remember that you have two families of IP addresses. IP address is like your home address, while the BGP is like the protocol used for route information. So IPv4, you have 2 raised to the power of 32 addresses. That is 4.3 billion if you are in the USA. If you are in the rest of the world, we say 4,000 millions. It's a difference in the term, but we can agree that this number of unique IP addresses is less than the population, and it's also less than the quantity of devices you have per person in the world, right? So this is exhausted. IPv4 is no more longer available to be assigned from the regional registry, so you are done. And then IPv6 is the new family of IP address. It's a difference in the way you write it. There below you have an example. It's an hexadecimal notation. Now you have 2 raised to the power of 128. So that's a lot of IP addresses. And I put an example that is you can establish a billion of IP addresses for every square millimeter on the Earth's surface. So that will be enormous quantity of nanobots in your body with their unique IP addresses. Okay, this is for introducing you the idea of the home addresses or the IP addresses. So in the internet, you also have the autonomous systems. Autonomous systems are like the pizza delivery guy or like the mailman, right? Each router, each network, you can say your internet service provider has like a land there. This land of IP addresses is called an autonomous system, and an autonomous system is like a network, and you have border gateways. These border gateways are called the autonomous systems, and these ones are the ones that say, okay, my network is, as the example, the autonomous system 100 tells that the 20.20.20.0 network is from there. And then you have another uh, autonomous system 200 that has the other address, right? So how BGP works uh, to uh, to go from the origin to the destination, right? Uh, this is what we are going to be. And then you have the regional internet registries that are the responsibles of assigning these IP addresses and autonomous system numbers to the different regions in the world. Um, Also, actually, I work at LACNIC, that is one of the regional registries, and you have the other four. So I explained to you, like, you have the pizza delivery guy and you need to go from origin A to destination B. So each of the routers in the middle, or each of the autonomous system in the middle, will know a portion of the routing table and tell, okay, if you want to go to that direction, to that IP address, take this direction, right? So this is the way, and it's very useful because if something happens, as you will see in the next picture, some routers are losing connection. We have I don't know, a missile, an attack in the data center, so the infrastructure is not widely available. But BGP reach their destination because they know all the information the routing table, so it can have these secondary pathways to reach the destination. So that is how it works. You say, okay, I am the owner of these autonomous systems. I manage these IP addresses. No, this is what the router said. It go through the internet, and the rest of the networks learn this BGP because of the announcements. It's called BGP route announcements. But okay, and here is a summary. So DNS is the other webinar we had the other day is for matching these IP addresses with domain name. It's like the phantom land, because you can have, I don't know, nicolasfiumarelli.com, but if you don't have the IP address, it's like no, not having a match either. So this is the word of the three things: DNS for matching IP addresses with domain name, IP to identify your home, and BGP is like the postman or the pizza delivery guy. So let's explain about the problems, because everything in the internet is great at the beginning, but without security. So uh, common case is the Pakistan Telecom route hijack done by Pakistan Telecom. You on the left you have YouTube saying, okay, my BGP announcement is I am YouTube, some is my autonomous system number, and my IP addresses are that one, right? But Pakistan Telecom did the same. It was a fault. It was an unintentional error. They announced that they were YouTube. They were the IP addresses of YouTube, right? That was fake. So all the traffic ended like from this provider from Telnor Pakistan, Aga Khan University, and other providers that were close to this Pakistan Telecom learned this fake route. So when people wanted to access YouTube, they ended up going to Pakistan Telecom, and that generated a denial of service attack, and everything went down for some minutes until someone discovered, oh, okay, this was the fault. Let's correct, and that is. But this is called origin BGP origin hijacking. But you can have another type of hijacking, that is the AES path hijacking. In this scenario, for example, each router is learning the routes from the others, But in this case, there is a rogue ASN, the AS5 with the devil face there, and they are announcing that they are the path to go to AS4 is through AS5. So they lie to AS3. They say, okay, AS path is 5.4. This is also part of BGP protocol, right? And the AS3 tell the AS1, okay, my path is 354 to reach 4, right? Through 5. But that was a lie, it was a fake thing. And at the end, AS1 was confused on where to go to AS4. And at the end, it takes the path to AS5, and maybe AS5 is taking the traffic, redirecting you to malicious websites, etc., etc. So this is called AS path hijacking. So here we come. Routing security, how to prevent this kind of hijacks is not so difficult. Let's explore the concepts. RPKI, as was explained, is published in a repository. You have the regional registries that are the owners of the IP addresses. It means that, for example, an internet service provider here in Uruguay, Antel, for example, uh, has IP addresses assigned by LACNIC in this case. So Antel create the ROA. The ROA is the object Dirk was talking about. The ROA say, okay, for these IP addresses, you can only reach via this origin ASN. So RPKI is charged in a repository, and every network that wants to validate the BGP announcements received by the routers, they can do what is called RPKI validation, or having a validator in your network. Like the SIDN validator or Fort validator or different kind of validators out there. They are public and free, obviously. And you take the information from the repository and you can validate this route. This information is cryptographically signed, so you have an idea of authenticity there, right? And then if you have route origin validation, you can prevent the origin hijackings. That was the first case I mentioned to you. So these were the case, like when the rogue ASN, like let's say AS666, is this Martian network or the phishing network or scamming networks, and this announcement goes, but someone in the middle, like the face of the internet there, is say, oh no, I have a ROA sign from RIPE, for example. RIPE is the regional registry for Europe, and it says no. If you are going to originate this prefix, you need to be the AS100. In this case, the AS666 was trying to announce, to do this BGP announcement. So the RPKI validation says no, this is an invalid origin detected, as it says, because AS666 is not the originated ASN for this prefix. That is basically how you prevent route hijack. On the middle of your network, you have someone has RPKI validation, so this announcement is not being propagated. But and this is an example again. So, for example, RPKI on the network on the left, on the other network, on the other network, every network that has RPKI validation or ROAS created for their networks will be helping to prevent this route hijack to be happening. So this is the scenario when we have the AES path hijacking. So if you already have RPKI, this attack could be done as well. So you are not protecting for AES path hijacks with RPKI. So you need another one that is called ASPA. That is a new protocol, like I think 2 years ago. It's still in diapers, and some of the regional registries already deployed this in the RPKI repository, because the repository is the same, but these are more objects to validate. And now, what is the people that has the authorization of this is the owner of the autonomous systems. They can say, okay, here are my providers, here are my clients, here are my ASNs, my autonomous system related with me. So that will fix the way when you check the AS path, because you will identify if in the middle, in the AS path, there is a rogue ASN now. So via these ASPA objects, you establish relationships within provider, customers, clients, and then you will know as well uh, via RPKI validation when you are in front of an attack, a raw ASN, or an invalid path. So here it is another example. The AS66 is the wrong network, but what in here is the it's altering the route, right? But the internet is very smart and have all the ASPA repository authorization. So it says it's valid to go from 100, it's valid to go from 700, but not the 666. So in this at this time, this the ASPA will tell, okay, this is not, it's a invalid path blocked, so you cannot go through here. And that is
Nico, I can give you two more minutes.
exactly. Here is my summary here. So on one side, to prevent route origin hijacking, you have RPKI, it is who owns these IP addresses, and the ASPA is this relationship of autonomous system legit? That are the question, and that was solved. But in both cases, as Dirk said, this is not post-quantum safe, and that comes all the part that Dirk comment about the RPKI sizes. I have also some slides about it. Important thing that X509 PQC certificates are being improved in the LAMPS working group, that is one of the IETF working groups. This is all I wanted to mention. Hope concepts are more clarified, or at least lower to more simple concepts. Thank you for the opportunity. Open to questions as well.
And thank you, Nico. And now you understand why Nico had to go first and Dirk later, because Nico showed the challenges and Dirk looked into the future. But I hope that it adds up for you anyway. Again, my apologies to both, as it is my mistake. I think that you showed quite well what we're discussing here, and that also why it is important to protect. But I think it's also important to show to point to that there is a new standard, but that the internet world is not always ready to deploy these standards, and sometimes take years and years. And the question is whether we can afford to do so with post-quantum cryptography, because one of these days, quantum will be here. And how do we prepare ourselves for that? So how are we going to, we propose, as I3C, we propose to do that is the final speaker, which is João Focal Moreno. João, I'm giving the floor to you to tell us about how do we, as I3C, see the working groups that we're proposing to go forward. João is a cybersecurity expert from Brazil, but he's also the vice chair of I3C's working group number 9 on PQC and co-author of I3C PQC report. So the floor is yours, João. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So, everyone can see my screen, right?
No, it says that it's sharing, but I'm not seeing anything. So it says double click, but that's only to show the complete screen. So we're not seeing the slides.
Okay, let me try again.
Yes.
What about now?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so, well, building on what we've heard so far is now the focus of the next steps. And my objective here is to speak about what the future work should look like for the routing group. So just clarifying that this work we are doing in 2 different working groups, one specifically about routing, as we are discussing here, and second one on DNS. And this is the information I have to the routing working group. So first, let me start with one important clarification. Our work is not a standard setting exercise. So we are not proposing to change standards, and we are not here to decide which crypto system should be used. And because, well, this work belongs to the relevant standardization bodies and the technical processes. So we brought this discussion here, but we also acknowledge that this has a proper forward to be discussed. We can help to organize this discussion, but we will not take decisions here. And so our role is different. We will identify the deployment, coordination, and operational work that is needed once the starts exist. And the ecosystem is actually able to implement them safely and currently. So today, I'm going to focus on what routing work group should do, how that work can be structured, and what challenges we will need to solve together. And because our working group is about reaching the right people and building the partnership to sustain this effort and do the transition timely. So first, why routing requires a specific work track? And I brought here three different main reasons. The first one is that we are speaking of a real-time operational environment, and the changes are not abstract. They interact directly with the validation behavior, propagation, convergence, and operational stability, as everyone knows. We are also speaking of a globally interdependent system. So different actors can move at different speeds, but the decisions will affect the global system. The whole environment depends on each one of the nodes working correctly and leading to the same objective. And well, the third one is that this requires a huge operational chain, from network operators to vendors to standard bodies to governments. And this is why routing needs a dedicated work track of its own. And so what comes next? Well, so the objective of this group is to identify the deployment, coordination, operational challenges involved in preparing routing security mechanisms for a post-quantum transition. So that means understanding dependencies, identifying blockers, mapping transition risks, testing assumptions, because even though we are not a standardization body, we want to know the effects of this updates into the systems, and we want to translate the technical development into an operational relevant guidance. And this is very much in the objective of globally coordinated and practical transition that everyone knows we need to maintain the security of our systems. So the proposed structure of the work were in the first track, we plan on working on where the cryptography is used, like to map the dependencies in routing security today. So we will build this definitely in the knowledge of people like Nicholas and Dirk, because they already have a very complex picture of the system right now. We also work with which components and workflows are affected, which actors we need to involve, and where the dependencies exist across the chain. So we'll build a shared operational baseline so the discussion can be grounded in reality. The second track, we need to understand the practical implications of the future deployment. So what happens when signatures and keys become larger? So Dirk already mapped how larger these keys will become. So we need to understand what is the implications of this. And we need to know to validate the workflows. We need to know what happens to how we are going to handle the operational while these changes are undergoing. We need to know what kinds of implementation constraints may appear and what overheads may emerge, like in processing, storage, or in more generally, the operation itself. And again, we are not doing this to decide which crypto system to use. We plan to do this to know and understand the operational consequences of the deployment of the model that we are envisioning to fix the quantum unsafety risk we have. And so the third type of work is more on the transition planning. So we need to look into the phase deployment, the hybrid periods, the coexistence of legacy systems, the backwards compatibility, and the uneven readiness across operations and regions, and of course the failure and rollback scenarios. And this is very important work that we need to do when we have greater picture of all the pieces and how they're operationally joined together. And in the end, and this will bring the most value for the world is how we can produce on what will be the practical guidance we will develop. So we will present the deployment considerations, the testing priorities, the readiness questions, the implementation checklist, the coordination recommendations, and of course the operational risk notes. So this is all about our work to translate the awareness that we did in the first phase of the report to the practical preparedness, which is the second phase that we are entering into. And for this, we know that we'll have several challenges from how sensitive is the operation that we're speaking of, how to deal with the uneven readiness, because this is a multi-party system that takes a long time to evolve, and we need to account this. So the proposal that Dirk came about how to allow the nodes to communicate using legacy and also post-quantum safe protocols, not protocols, but crypto systems at the same time. And we need to take this into consideration, the legacy and the implementation constraints. We need to work on the coordination effort, which is gigantic, and also on the operational capacity, because we know that everyone has a different capacity of executing these changes. And this is actually a more holistic view of the network capacity to handle this. And well, now that we have a greater picture of what we need to do, I'm here with the invitation. So to join our working group, please send an email to Walt Demetrius, which is leading the efforts on this work. And we are seeking the right experts to join, so please reach out. And we are also seeking for partners to make this next phase possible. So to partner with us and to become one of the sponsors of this whole effort that takes a lot of time and also a lot of effort. And we'll need to be a global effort nonetheless. So yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joao. I think you made it very clear what the IS3C's ambitions are, and that is the same in the DNS working group, because this was one of the examples. Before I give the floor to the people with questions, there was a question in the chat that I'll read out so that it's in the webinar. Will the delay in moving the IP version 6 leave IP version 4 network significantly more vulnerable in the post-quantum era, or does it not matter? And Nicolas Fumarelli answered that it doesn't really change, but that IP version 6 has an IP security by default, and that is, of course, then the difference, but not for where the quantum is concerned. There's room for questions. I'm going to see if I can see and see who is raising a hand. I saw two, but there's only one left. So that is Anand Rajay. If I pronounce your name right, please, the floor is yours. Let's see if I can. Yes. I can only ask. You have a permission to speak, so it should be working now, I hope. Then you have to unmute yourself. No? Anand, can you unmute yourself? Because I gave you permission, I think. Apparently it's not working. Then I'll go to the next question. That is Sandosh. I've unmuted you. I should have unmuted you,
Yeah,
Sandosh.
can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. So as I put in the chat, my question was to Santosh about what he said about moving standardization is the slowest moving part. So I know from the IETF also there are discussions that they say that we have to wait until the standards become matured to start working on PQC. So do you think from the UK perspective or from the UK government perspective that the governments will mandate standardization bodies to fasten or faster standardize for PQC? Do you think so?
I think that Sandosh has just left the
No, I'm
webinar
still here,
because he
but
had to leave at 3 o'clock.
I'll quickly answer. I'm here and I'll go. Especially the standardization, initiatives and organizations that support them. The government does not have a direct oversight or control on those. We can only encourage, once the standards are available, a rapid deployment. But before that, no government has individually the power. And this is why we need initiatives such as the IGF and IS3C to raise the awareness that collectively, as a global team, we can work towards this. Individual countries cannot do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Santosh. I thought you had left, but you were still here. Very good. I'm still looking at Anand, but there is no way that I seem to be able to give him permission, because I have given permission. So Anand, if you can hear me, then maybe you should unmute yourself, and otherwise please ask your question in the chat and we'll make sure that it is answered. I see that I sent that only to Nicholas. That should not have been the question. Are there any other questions? Then please raise your hand. I do not see any other hands. There is still a little time, so if somebody has a question, then please ask it now before we close the meeting. Okay, I don't see any questions, so that means that you've been very clear. Then I'm going to move towards ending this webinar, and I think that we've heard over the 3 webinars that we've organized in the past 2 months, that we heard many concerns being voiced, but also challenges identified, even solutions offered, and the consequences discussed and potential solutions, as I said, were offered. Today, 2 things are certain. We know that billions of research money are being invested in the development of quantum computers, and OECD mentioned in its latest report that it's 55 billion over 2025. And we also know that if a quantum computer goes live, the moment it does, it will be able to break all current security algorithms. And to remind people, the first quantum products are already on the market, and for example, in sensoring. And people are experimenting with hybrid computers. So could a classical computer become powerful enough to break algorithms with some quantum injection? And also, who will be the first to use that computer? Will it be the good side or will it be a darker side? And what I hear around me is that although many people agree that it may be a decade away before the first operating quantum computer is active, we simply don't know. It could be one eureka moment that brings together the right components, and then all of a sudden that so-called quantum day is upon us. And we can pretend that we have a lot of time, and there's an analogy with the environmental cases being made. Everybody knows something needs to be done, but somehow we still move in a different direction in many ways. Not all, but many ways. So we have an option here, and the option is to let the standardization people do their work, because as Joao said, we do not in any way want to interfere with the technical development being done there. What we are proposing is a simultaneous path in which we can prepare the world for this transition, that we can raise the awareness that for the need for the transition and start to present potential ways forward, so that when the standards are there and everybody agrees that they're the right standards, that we can move forward in deploying them, and that we don't have to discuss for years how we're going to deploy them and who is responsible and do we procure them or do we not procure them, that all stakeholders have made their decision. And that compared to the deployment of DNS and RPKI over the years, that takes years, if not decades, that we may simply not have this time. And there is the analogy with the Y2K bug. Everybody realized that if we don't act, things may go wrong. And perhaps we'll never find out that the actions we took were right or wrong. But the fact is, almost everybody acted upon this challenge. And I think we're facing the same sort of challenge. We're proposing to do this work, and I think that it's timely. But as Joao said, we have this program. I can also say that we have excellent experts volunteering to be in the working groups, but that this work needs to be assisted professionally, because it needs to be translated into reports, into roadmaps, into webinars, into awareness training. And that is where we need financial partners. And we're working on that, but we cannot do without them. and we cannot do without experts willing to put in some time to work together on creating this environment that will assist us to move forward at the right time. So you're invited to join this effort, either financially or by giving us some of your time. Joao showed you the email address. You can also sign up through the Dynamic Coalition's website on the Internet Governance Forum's channel website. So let us know if you're interested, because we cannot do this without your help. But we hope that we are able to give you what you need when the time is there. So I'll take a look at final questions, because Anand's hand is still up, but I have not seen a question in the chat. So with that, I'm looking at if there's any final questions, then please raise your hand now so I can give you the floor. Thank you, Nicholas. Then if not, I'm going to go to the speakers and ask them in one line how you think that we should be moving forward, or what you think is the most important. So I'm starting with you, Benoit. What is your takeaway from this session?
Hello. Yeah, so it's keep yourself informed, follow up all the standardization and technical works, and prepare your transition. That's it.
Thank you. Santosh has left us, but I think his message is quite clear from a banking perspective. I'll go in the right order now. Nicholas, what is your takeaway from this session?
Yes, similar to Benoit, people to be informed, and remember that this is a multi-stakeholder effort. It's a optional effort. So all the parties must be aligned to go through the transition. That is what I wanted to say.
Thank you. And Dirk, what is your takeaway?
I would say in the ITF, we just need to do something. It doesn't matter that much what. Can be ECC, can be covering the authentication between CAs. Just some first step would be a good step.
Thank you very much. And Joao, what's your takeaway?
Oh, let's work together. Join the effort. It's really important to have everyone on board.
Thank you very much. And I can only underscore that, and I hope that you will join our effort in one of the ways that are possible. That leads me to close this webinar. I would like to thank our speakers, Benoit, Santosh, Nicolas, Dirk, and Joao, for their time and effort to present this webinar to you. I'm glad to say that we've done 3 webinars in the past 2 months that attracted quite some attention, and that it's clear to people that this is an important topic. And thank you for the IGF Secretariat for assisting us with hosting the webinars, and that we look forward to present our work in the near future on how we're going to continue this work, because it really needs to be continued. As I said, you can join IS3C through the IGF website, as Nico is showing in the chat. So please reach out to us if you want to know more or would like to join. And with that, I close this meeting, thanking everybody again for their attendance and questions. So have a very good day. And some of you who are interested can move to the working group strategy at the IGF taking place right now. So thank you, and have a very good day.